So they tell you to hold your birth plan loosely with very good reason. My initial birthing plan was to have a water birth at my birthing center with our midwives with little to no medical, well, I should say medicines or medications or anything like that, as natural as possible. What ended up happening was I had an emergency C-section after 122 hours of labor. Let me explain. I did very well during my pregnancy. I think I had some food aversion, heartburn, but I honestly, I had a pretty good pregnancy, like no high blood pressure issues, which will come into play later. No high blood pressure issues, no blood sugar issues. Thank the Lord. But then came week 39 when it was time to have a baby. So that week, I remember I started having the symptoms or the signs rather, that baby was coming, the bloody show and there's the mucus. If you know, like the things that you start seeing and you're like, oh, it's about to go down. So I remember having a checkup at my birthing center and my midwife says, this baby is about to be here in 48 hours. For sure, she's going to be here in 48 hours. Girl or guy, whoever's watching this, 48 hours comes and goes, okay? And I am calling the birthing center like, hey, she is not here. She's not here. And they said, I call them also because I'm like, I have not eaten. I have not slept. I'm having contractions and I hate this. Okay. Like what should we do here? And they said, come on into the birthing center. We're actually going to put you under a morphine sleep, which I did not know was a thing, by the way. They inject me inject me with morphine so I can have a few hours of rest because the stress on your body is just not good if you're about to be in labor. So I'm saying, okay, let's do it. So my husband and I go to the birthing center. They put me under a morphine sleep for a few hours. I wake up and I feel like I was in heaven. It was so refreshing. So we head back home. And by the time we're home, I'm having contractions again. 48 more hours comes and goes. I call the birthing center again. And this time I'm like crying. This time I'm like, okay, I quit. I changed my mind. I don't want to do this anymore. It was awful. Yeah, I was having contractions. I could not sleep. I could not eat. I am frustrated and there's just no letting up. So they say, okay, come on in. It's about midnight, by the way. They're like, just come in and we'll see if we can just give you another morphine sleep to get some rest. We go back to the birthing center. Again, it's like midnight. And they sit me down, the midwife and the nurse, and they say, look, this is highly unusual, which becomes a theme in my delivery story, the highly unusual. My husband even jokes about it, saying like, that sounds like my wife. There's always something highly unusual going on with her. They're like, normally it does not take this long. And because of that, we feel like you need to go to the hospital. In this moment, that's a blow because, again, I had a plan. But at the same time, there's so much happening and I'm so desperate. I'm like, whatever I have to do. I'm so over it right now. I don't care about the plan. Just throw the plan out. I don't care. I just need this to stop. So we go to the hospital where a midwife from the birthing center was already waiting for me. And they start to poke me for the IV. And the nurse is like trying to stick me in the veins. And she's like, normally I don't have a hard time doing this. Let me go get the other nurse to see if we can get a vein on you. So she gets the nurse. The nurse comes in. She has a hard time before finally finding a vein to hook me up to the IV. Then she's like, okay, good. Let's get the epidural in you. Let's get that going. The doctor comes in. She pokes me in the back. I feel the little whatever they have going on. I feel it in my back. And she's there for a minute. And she's like, okay, this is like, we're going to try this again. Okay. So she does it and inserts the needle again. I don't know what's happening back there. And she finally gets it after some moments. And yeah. So we finally got the epidural going. We got the IVs going. And I have relief for the first time in 5 days. I was in labor again for 120 hours. I'm doing the math, right? 24 times 5 days. My husband will correct me if I'm wrong. He'll probably be in the comments making corrections. So yeah, so we have that going. And not long after, the doctors and nurses come flooding into my room. They're like, and they start flipping me back and forth. They're just like, get up, turn this way, turn that way. Come to find out, My midwife, who's doing a great job at like filling me in with what's going on, she's like, hey, so every time you have a contraction, your baby's heart rate drops. And that's scary, right? So they're like, all right, we're going to give you Pitocin. We're going to induce this labor. And we're going to try to get you more fully dilated faster because you're only 2 centimeters dilated right now. Okay, let's do it. And she's like, oh, by the way, I need to check for sure to make sure your water's broken. And so she's checking and she's like, I think it's broken. She's like, I feel hair, but I'm not sure that your water's actually broken. And I'm like, okay. So she grabs the needle that looks like a little crochet needle and she's trying to get it broken. And she's like, all right, I think I got it. But she's still kind of checking and she's like, I'm not sure though. Let me go get a doctor. She goes and gets the doctor. The doctor comes in and the doctor checks me and says, hey, so it's actually not broken. She's right. Let me grab the needle. She grabs the hook again. She goes in. She's like, boom, now your water's broken. Now, we can get this rolling. Is my baby stirring on that monitor? I might have a little more time. An hour comes and I'm only still 8 centimeters dilated. And they say, hey, this is getting into dangerous territory. My midwife comes and she explains to me, she says, I know this is not at all what you planned. This is not what you wanted. And I know there will be some grief with this, but I do recommend a C-section at this time. I want a healthy baby. So I said, sure. Yep, let's do it. Let's do it. I didn't realize how fast a C-section was. So I felt like almost in 10 minutes, my baby was out. And after I was sewn up and, you have that blue thing covering you, I remember the doctor coming by my ear and she's saying words. And I'm not processing what she's saying because, again, 5 days, no sleep. I don't know what's happening. The only thing I clock is that she says, and because of this, you will not be eligible for a VBAC or a vaginal birth after cesarean. And that part, I was like, huh? Wait, what happened? So I kind of stored that in my mind. I'm like, I'm going to revisit that. But, I'm going to be in the moment with my new baby. But I did hear that part. I don't know what else happened around that, but I heard that part. So fast forward 6 weeks into my postpartum check. And the nurse did explain to me, she said I had an unintended tear into my cervix. So if I have a vaginal birth going forward, the chances of having a uterine rupture are so much higher. So they advise me strongly not to ever have a vaginal birth. I must always schedule a cesarean section, a C-section. So there's that. Very disappointing. And shout out to the midwives and nurses who held space for me to grieve, even though I was not in a place where I'm thinking about having a child at that time, but it's just like, wait, what? It feels like a loss. So they did rightly say, hey, we know that you probably need a moment to process this. It is a huge blow. Mind you, I'm going from one natural births to now being told I won't ever have that. So there's that. So that was a crazy situation that only got crazier because after I was released from the hospital with my baby, 2 days after having her, I ended up back in the emergency room for postpartum preeclampsia at midnight again, because late at night my blood pressure was spiking and my feet were ginormous, like swollen so big. And I went to the hospital, and when they told me we're admitting you, I cried because I had just gotten home after, again, the past week of just madness in my mind and just so exhausted, and finally got home after having this baby. And they're like, yeah, you have to be admitted and you have to be hooked up to a 24-hour magnesium drip so that your blood pressure can get regulated again. And after 24 hours of the magnesium drip and a few more hours of them checking to make sure my blood pressure was within a range they felt good about sending me home, they sent me home with some medication. And then a day later, I was back again in the emergency room for the same issues. Spiked blood pressure, swollen feet, and they just admitted me. I didn't do the magnesium drip again because they only do that one time, but they did give me more medicines to help my blood pressure and then sent me home the next day. I was only able to really endure that because they allowed my husband and baby to come and stay with me in the hospital, which was a blessing. I didn't even know they could do that, but they were allowed to spend the night with me, and I was breastfeeding, so that was a blessing. So I went to the hospital about 3 times after having this baby and was admitted twice. The third time was on my birthday, and thankfully my blood pressure got it together pretty quickly for them to send me home. So the emergency C-section, the postpartum preeclampsia kept me in and out of the hospital. And not to mention, they tell you you're going to bleed. After having a baby, your body is now bleeding for 4 to 6 weeks. I bled for about 11 to 12 weeks, y'all. I went back to the doctor like, hey, so I'm still bleeding? When is this supposed to stop? And come to find out I had endometriitis, not to be confused with endometriosis. And I had to take some antibiotics, and there are a lot of details that are left out of here for time's sake because I didn't want the video to be too long. But if you have any questions, just drop it down in the comments and I will answer them. But y'all, it was chaotic.